Hello, and welcome to our intern and early career webinar. My name is Gina Grover, and I'm a practice leader in the advisory services department here at Weichert Workforce Mobility. We're very happy to have you with us today. I'll let my esteemed panelists introduce themselves in just a few moments, but first I wanted to go over a couple of items. So as part of the registration for this webinar, you were given the opportunities to submit questions to our panelists, and we're going to have an opportunity to address most of those questions. However, if you still have questions as we're talking today, please feel free to put them into the chat, and we'll be able to follow up with you personally via email with answers to your questions. So today, our webinar highlights are the results of our third annual intern and early career survey. All of the attendees today will receive a copy of the research report along with a recording of this webinar after the event. If you're eager to get your copy of the research paper, you can go ahead and scan the QR code that's on your screen, and you'll be able to get access to that right away. So with all the housekeeping bits out of the way, I am going to go ahead and ask Alice to go ahead and introduce herself, please.
Sure. Hi, my name is Alice Terry. I am a senior specialist global mobility with Micron Technology, based in our Manassas, Virginia site, which is just outside of Washington, D.C. And I've been in the mobility space, 20 years now, so quite some time.
Thank you. But you, Slava?
Yeah, hi everybody. Slava Binkin, Senior Global Mobility Partner at Thermo Fisher Scientific. I've been with Thermo Fisher for roughly 4 years now. I've been in the mobility industry for about 10 years now.
Great. So we have a lot of experience to talk about today, and we're going to have a great conversation. So let's go ahead and kick it off and talk about your intern programs. Tell me a little bit about your intern program, Alice.
Sure. So currently we have interns in the U.S. and India, and we're going to start having them in our New Mexico site as well. This year in the U.S. have 300 to 400 interns, with the majority, probably half of those being in Boise, Idaho, which is where we're headquartered, followed by Manassas. And in India, we have about 175 spread out across our different sites in India.
Okay. And what kind of mobility benefits are you providing to those interns?
We provide housing, transportation, and travel. So in India, they receive housing and travel, but not transportation. In the U.S., they receive a transportation allowance, housing, as well as travel. They do contribute a small amount to housing, but for the most part, we're covering the housing for them.
Okay. And I know housing is a big topic of discussion, so I'm going to come back to housing because I think we'll have a lot to say about that. Slava, why don't you tell me a little bit about your program where you're sending your interns to?
Yeah, absolutely. So our intern program consists of, we have about 200 interns roughly every year. We've been pretty consistent with that for the past 3 or 4 years, I'd say. Right now, we're only doing internship programs for the US, but we hope to grow it a little bit more globally. So I'm a little bit jealous, Alice, that you have interns outside of the US. And the only benefits we provide right now are lump sum allowances. But we have partnered with Weichert to provide content about the sites that they're going to and some of those housing options as well, the transportation options. So while we don't provide anything other than a lump sum, we have provided tools and resources for the interns that they can leverage to help them out.
And it sounds like you're using technology to help them
Absolutely.
in that regard. So where are you recruiting your interns from, Slava?
Yeah, so right now it's all over the country. I don't have anything specifically for you, but I know that we have about 40 sites that we have internships at. So based all across the U.S., north, south, east, west, no specific universities or colleges that I can tell you about. That's more for TA to talk about. But I know that when we get those lists of interns, they're spread across all over the country. There isn't a location that we're not in. Like I said, we're in 40 plus locations at this point. I know when I started several years ago, we were probably like at 30, 35. So we've been growing our sites and giving that exposure to those interns all across the country.
How about you, Alice? Are there any particular universities or campuses that you focus your recruiting on?
We focus on networks. So we have about 73 schools in the U.S. altogether. We have a Northeast network, a Northwest network, and then we have the minority serving institutions that we focus on within the U.S. And then in India, it's just the local and national colleges and universities that we recruit from.
We mentioned that housing in our survey was noted as being the biggest challenge when it comes to interns. I mean, it sounds like you have a different approach to housing. In Slava, you provide a technology resource, you provide the lump sum, and then a technology resource to your interns. So they do have some support there. Alice, what are you doing in terms of providing housing to your interns?
We're securing the housing for them. So our relocation management company, our partner, secures the housing for them. Boise can be a challenging area. It's our headquarters, and that's where the majority of our interns are spending their summers. And depending on what's going on, there's a big soccer tournament some years in Boise. So we do have a challenge sometimes, but our housing is secured for them on their behalf. They do have the opportunity when we're putting them in apartments. So we rotate between apartments and extended stay hotels. It just depends on availability at the time and what's going on for that particular year. Because we also have a lot of assignments, short-term and long-term assignments that we need to plan housing for. So depending on volume and what's going on, they'll either be in an apartment or an extended stay hotel. So if they are going into an apartment, they do all have their own bathroom. So if it's a 3-bedroom, it's a 3-bathroom. If it's a 2-bedroom, it's a 2-bedroom.
So do you assist them in the roommate sharing, or is that something that they have to do on their own?
We assist them. They do have the opportunity to list someone that they may be interested in if they know someone they want to share with, but otherwise it's all coordinated, and we cross our fingers and hope for the best. But we haven't had too many issues on the roommate front, but it's either an apartment or an extended stay hotel. And if it is a hotel, they're in the room by themselves. So it's only if we're doing a 2 or 3-bedroom apartment that there would be sharing.
Great. So it sounds like when they get there, they, move right into their apartment, their hotel. They don't have to, do anything on their own. They're all set to go. So, and how long do your internships generally last? Is it kind of the traditional summer program?
It is. There are a few that are, outside of the summer program, but mostly it's a summer program and they overlap. So there's staggered start dates, but typically between May and August is when you'll see the majority of the interns.
How about you, Slava? Is it kind of the traditional intern?
Yeah, so our internships are usually 12 weeks during the summer. And like Alice said, we also have 2 start dates, one in May, one in June. But yeah, for the intern specifically, it's a 12-week program.
Okay. Yeah, it's still pretty traditional. We did have some respondents say, I think it's more of a trend that we're seeing over the past 3 years that, they're maybe getting a little bit away from the traditional summer internship programs, but it's definitely the majority of companies are still doing it, the summer internship type of thing. One of the things that was kind of interesting in our studies was 22% of our respondents indicated that they're expecting less intern volume this year over last year's. And I know, Slava, you said it's been pretty consistent over the last few years for you. Is that right?
Yeah, we're actually very, very pleased with those numbers because, like you said, the surveys show that the numbers are going down a little bit, but we've actually stayed pretty consistent at about 200. I mean, I think last year it was like 212. This year it's going to be right around 200, maybe plus minus, a few. But we're actually very pleased with our TA teams and recruiting efforts that we've remained consistent while maybe others' numbers are showing that, other programs are going down a little bit. But we're kind of pleased at 200 and we're grow globally, hopefully. Like I said, I've been trying to kind of grow the program ever since I joined outside of the US a little bit, maybe into Canada, Mexico. We'll start with this region first, and then maybe, over to EMEA or APAC as well. So we're hoping that those numbers actually increase over the next couple of years.
Yeah, you've got some big plans. How about you, Alice? Has your population kind of remained the same or grown, decreased?
Grown overall, for sure. From last year to this year, there's a slight decrease in the U.S., but an increase in India. But over the past, I would say 3 years since COVID, basically, we've continued to grow. And I think the decrease this year just may purely be based on the business needs. But overall, I think we've been consistently with growth.
And what are you contributing that to? Is it just more, kind of attention to an intern program and seeing, that's a good way to start the talent pipeline, or what do you attribute that growth to?
Absolutely. One is to meet a business need, for that particular summer. But then also we are definitely focused on developing that talent pipeline.
Yeah, that's definitely what we saw in our survey. Companies are really seeing the value of tapping into that talent as early as possible, right? So that's why intern programs are such a big deal. So, from an intern's perspective, what do you think are the most important factors when they're selecting an internship? But you, Slavo, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I would say that it's the company, it's the brand, I would say, right? I wouldn't say it's necessarily like the relocation benefits that would sell somebody to take an internship. Obviously, the more you give them, the happier they'll be. But I would say like it's really the brand, the company, the projects that they're going to be working on, the exposure that they're going to get, the responsibilities that they're going to have, right? All of those things for a long-term future for them and the company. I think that's what they would be looking at. Obviously, relocation benefits would be nice to have, and if it's more, then all the better. But I don't necessarily think that if one company offers 5K and then the other company that's secondary, that's kind of second or third on their wish list, would offer them 10K, that they would go with that company simply because of the higher allowance. I would like to think that in my opinion, that they're taking the internship based on brand, company recognition, how far they see themselves going within that company, growing. And we've actually seen that in our space as well, that we see the same names coming in, summer after summer, which is the whole idea and the whole, yeah, that's the whole intention behind it, right? That's the whole goal, is talent retention. So we do see a lot of returning interns and then a lot of intern conversions to full time after they graduate.
That's awesome. Yeah, we definitely saw that in our survey too. I think it was 98% of the companies responded saying that interns are converted most of the time or all of the time into full-time employees. So that's definitely an objective of a lot of companies for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's kind of building that pipeline and keeping that talent, right? I mean, from a company standpoint, if you're going to have these interns come internship with your company year after year, and you're investing man hours and you're investing resources and financial resources into them, only for them to go somewhere else after they graduate, and that's not like the best situation. You want to invest in them year after year, and then afterwards, right, you've built that relationship with the line managers, with the talent team, with your company philosophy, your company culture. So the idea is that after they graduate, they would take a full-time role within your organization.
Yeah, that's the goal. So same question to you, Alice. What do you think is the most important thing when someone's considering an internship?
I agree. I think part of our attraction, if you will, is the benefits as well. So, not all intern programs provide the housing and transportation that we provide. But in addition to that, we do provide benefits, the medical, the dental, the 401k, the vacation. So they're treated like a normal full-time employee. And I think that's an attractive aspect of our program. But in addition to that, I think it's the exposure, it's the hands-on experience, it's the opportunity to work for a semiconductor company and gain an experience. It's an opportunity to work in the fab. So the exposure for sure, and the experience that's going to be gained, and just the reputation, the brand that was mentioned, you can't pass up that opportunity. So as interns are considering where they're going to spend their summers and what they want to experience, I think that definitely plays a role in it. The fact that Micron is one of the top 3, U.S. semiconductor companies, and they're going to get that exposure and hands-on practical experience with that type of company, and be able to work in a fab, be able to work alongside engineers that they would work with in the future. And, just to see how chips are made, the whole aspect of the hands-on and practical experience, I think, is definitely attractive and an important benefit for interns when they're considering their internship.
Yeah, like they're going to get some fantastic experience for sure doing an internship for Micron. We heard a lot from respondents, or a lot of respondents reported that they were having some challenges finding qualified candidates that don't already have intern offers. Is that something that you are experiencing as well, Alice?
I would think that competition definitely exists. Specifically for India, I think there may be more competition. For the US, I think the timing of when we start our recruiting activities eliminates some of that concern, because we recruit in the fall. So I think, being strategic in the timing of when you're recruiting, kind of getting in there first and being the first ones that they connect with. So I think that eliminates some of the stress and the anxiety of getting the qualified candidates. So that the timing of our recruiting activities definitely help in that area.
That's great to know. How about you, Slava? Are you having any issues finding those great candidates?
No, not that I'm aware of. I think this day and age in general, I think you'd be kind of hard to press to find somebody who doesn't already have some kind of offer on the table, right? I mean, when we go to these campus events and these hiring events, if it's like 8 o'clock in the morning, then sure, you'll be the first one to get to them and they won't have another offer in hand, but you give them an extra 30 minutes to make the rounds, and I'm sure they're going to have, 10 other offers in hand. So, like Alice said, I think it's being first to the front of the line definitely makes an impact, right? Being first in the game, and getting to that intern, kind of sell them on the job, on the opportunity, and those kind of things. But overall, I think it's tough to find an intern that only has one offer and nothing else, right? I mean, what does that say about the intern then? There's so many competitors out there, so many companies that we have to kind of fight with, that you'd be hard pressed to find somebody who doesn't already have an offer.
Okay. So now, Alice, if you're recruiting in the fall and they don't start their internship till May, June, how do you keep them engaged and make sure they don't pull a no-show when it's time to start their internship?
Right. So we do have pre-onboarding and post-onboarding focus areas, if you will. So once they accept their offer, there's a dedicated LinkedIn page that they're all invited to join. So it's keeping that connection. It's periodic newsletters. It's the recruiting team checking in with them. It's the hiring manager checking in with them. So I think it's that initial connection, keeping it until they're actually onboarded. And then once they actually join, those post onboarding activities, if you will, the 30, 60, 90-day check-ins, the connections, the volunteer activities and community service activities that they'll do as a group and with other Micron team members. But it's definitely staying connected from the time that they accept the offer until they actually onboard. And even after they onboard, it's how we're going to keep them engaged.
Right. And yeah, keeping them warm is huge, obviously. And that's on the part of the TA team, right? They're on the front lines. They're the ones that have built that relationship over the past several months. From a mobility standpoint, right? We don't get brought into it until a little bit further in the process, until they've already cleared background checks. And then mobility can kind of reach out and start making our interactions and our correspondences with them. So at least at Thermo Fisher, mobility isn't really involved on the front lines of it like the TA team is. So it's really up to the TA team to keep them warm, keep them engaged. They can absolutely share the relocation policies that we have that's applicable for interns, so that the intern has those expectations up front. They know exactly what they're going to get, and they know that at some point later down the line, they will be reached out to by relocation. But it's hard for mobility to be on those front lines. We do get brought in probably, I'd say, 60 to 90 days prior to their start date. So we can't start reaching out until they've cleared background checks and all of those kind of formalities have already taken place. But as soon as we can reach out, we absolutely do, also with the help of Weichert as well. So we try to do our part in terms of keeping them warm and engaged as much as possible.
Yeah, and we're the same. We're brought in, I mean, as soon as they accept the offer, pretty much their relocation is initiated. But we do a couple of open houses in advance of them starting their internship, just to introduce the mobility team, to introduce the relocation management company that's going to be working with them, going over the benefits, answering any questions they may have. And it's a lot of questions. So it does give them the opportunity to ask, how is the housing going to work? Who am I going to be roaming with? Where is the housing going to be? How does the transportation allowance work? Do I have to rent a car? Can I do ride share? So all those questions we're able to address before they even start in the form of an open house, so that they all can hear the same information and hear the same questions that the other interns are asking.
That's a great idea to kind of get that face to face, because right now we just provide them obviously the relocation policy, so they know who the players are. They know it's going to be our team. They know it's going to be Weichert and their counselors and that kind of stuff. But I think it does go a long way to have that face to face interaction with them, just so that they can put a face to a name and it's not just a black curtain there. And then it's, they can't peek behind it, right? So that they know that there actually is a live person that's going to be looking after their transition, their transfer. So that's such a great idea. I'll take that into account, Alice. Thank you.
And let me just say, I'm so used to referring to relocation management company when I'm in these type of webinars, but obviously we're all talking about Weichert, and the Weichert relocation counselors participate in the open house as well. So it's Weichert plus the mobility specialist.
Nice. So is that done virtually? Is that a virtual open house, or?
It is by Zoom.
Okay. So, I mean, it sounds like it's a really engaging practice to do, and it probably answers a lot of questions for the interns, and it's a very easy lift. It's a half hour Zoom meeting for a couple of people. So it's it's minimal effort, but it probably provides a lot of peace of mind for interns and maybe their parents too. They probably get a lot of questions from their parents, where are you going? Who's this company? What are they doing? Where are you going to live? So I think that's great.
Yeah, I like that. It kind of puts them at ease because what we find is that by the time they come to our team, they're very anxious to get the ball rolling, right? And they're like, I want to speak to somebody now and I want to get my allowance now because they've been kind of, kept warm for several months up until they get to that point of initiation. So I actually like that idea, getting to them ahead of time, putting them at ease, letting them know that we are going to do A, B, and C as promised, but it'll just come with time, right?
Right. And it's staggered too. So, and we let them know that your contact is based on your start date. So if you don't hear from Weichert right away, just, give us a minute. The earliest start dates are going to be contacted first and then the next wave. So it's just about managing expectations, keeping them informed and letting them know that they do have a point of contact, whether it's the mobility team or the Weichert relocation counselor that they can connect with.
That's great. So I think I mentioned before that 98% of our survey participants indicated that their interns always or frequently become full-time employees. Are you in line with that number as well? Are you seeing that, Slava?
Yeah, we do have a high conversion rate, absolutely. And that's the intention that I kind of talked about earlier is that if we're going to be investing in these interns, year after year, the end goal, and it's actually come to fruition for us that they get brought on as full-time employees afterwards. So I would say those numbers are pretty consistent, at least with our organization.
But you, Alice, same?
Agree.
Yeah.
The US goal, from what I understand, is 70% conversion. But, the hope is we're investing all this time and effort and money to develop this pipeline, that this pipeline will become our full-time employees for sure. That is definitely the goal.
So how do you ensure a smooth transition then from, an internship, they graduate and then they get the full-time job? What does that transition look like? How do you ensure that it's a smooth one?
I think for us, it goes back to that post-onboarding activity. So you have the onboarding as an intern and then they kind of go away and then they're coming back. But once they transition back into that full-time role, it's that post-onboarding again. It's the 30, 60, 90-day check-in. It's something as simple as their same employee ID number that they had when they were an intern. It's the same record in our Workday system. So it's not losing the fact that they were previous here as a team member. So you just transitioning from an intern to a full-time employee. The good thing is too, if they are relocating, they'll work with Weichert again. So they worked with Weichert as an intern. They'll work with Weichert again in their full-time role if they have to relocate. So it's those connections that they were already able to make as an intern that are now going to carry over into that full-time role. It's a lot of similar benefits because we did provide benefits as an intern. So that looks familiar to them as far as, medical and dental and vacation and 401k. But it's definitely that connection with the managers, the hiring managers, HR, the check-in periods. And at the end of their internship, they do a presentation to their leaders. So depending on where they're hired into, they may already have that connection based on who they've worked with during their internship. So it's really just all about staying connected from my view. That's the important piece, is making sure that they feel like they never left, basically.
I would agree with all of that. We would rely really on the TA team and the line managers to kind of bridge that gap from the time that their internship ends to the time that they're brought on as full-time employees. So we really would expect that the TA team would be kind of bridging that gap, be that stopgap for us. But then Alice actually touched on a great point in that they oftentimes will work with the same counselors at Weichert that they did when they were interns. So a lot of times they'll say, oh, I know Gina, or I know Carolyn, or I know whoever, right? I've done 3 summers with them. I know that I'll be well taken care of. So that's that kind of familiarity and that warmth as how we keep them engaged when they're brought on full time.
And while they're interns too, they participate in the different professional development activities. So they're already used to some of the professional development opportunities that Micron provides. But also it's the resume assistance, it's headshots, it's how do you search for a full-time position within Micron. So it's those opportunities while they're intern that's preparing them for their full-time roles as well.
That's great. It sounds like you give them a lot of support and really set them up for success as they transition to the real world as it is, right?
Right.
Kind of switching gears now a little bit, and something that we thought was kind of a interesting trend or an interesting statistic that came out of our survey was 45% of our respondents said that they had a co-op program, and it's been steadily increasing over the last 3 years. And I wanted you to tell me about your co-op programs. Slava, why don't you let me know how that is working for you?
Absolutely happy to. Yeah, so we do have a co-op program at Thermo Fisher. I would say the numbers aren't obviously as high as interns. So we have 200 interns. I would probably say about 65 out of those 200 would be co-ops. And for us, co-ops are longer than the 12-week traditional internship. So the co-op interns stay with us a long time. It could be anywhere from 6 months, 9 months, maybe up to a year. And the projects that they work on are a lot more significant because they're with us for longer. So the responsibilities that they get, the expertise, the knowledge that they get are a little bit more enhanced than what a traditional intern would do over 12 weeks. But I know that the team values the co-ops, and we do want to continue to see those numbers grow. The numbers that we have so far, we're happy with, and we want to continue to have those even go up more. So I'm happy to be part of that for the early talent team as much as possible. But yes, the main difference for interns are that they're with us longer, and the type of work that they do and the projects that they do are much more enhanced, are much more hands-on than what the 12-week interns do.
So I'm envisioning that co-ops are unique to maybe some certain businesses or certain roles, certain things that they're doing there at Thermo Fisher. It's not every business division has a co-op program. I'd imagine
Right.
that it's certain things that would require a co-op program. Is that a correct assumption?
Yeah. The way that our business is, it's biotech, it's pharmaceuticals, it's that kind of stuff. So a lot of times the co-ops are kind of on loan to us from their college or university. A lot of times we have relationships with those universities. They're working on special projects or testings or research, whether it be, cancer or any other type of illness. So a lot of times we have that relationship from company to college for many, many years. And it's a lot of the same kind of co-op interns. So these are kind of more, I would say that they're more earmarked for a little bit more high potential than the traditional intern.
Okay. And Alice, you have a co-op program there at Micron as well.
We have an apprenticeship program.
Apprenticeship, yes.
Yes, which is similar. And again, to your point, it has to do with the nature of our business. So the apprenticeship program is similar to the co-op program that Slava mentioned, in that the apprentices are in school at the same time that they're working at Micron. So it's not on a break like the interns are here during the summer. They're actually in school while they're spending some of their day in school, some of their day at Micron working. And then once they finish their apprenticeship, the idea is for them to have full-time employment. So they would come in as a technician. Whereas a new college grad or an intern that's coming in after they finish school may be coming in as an engineer with that engineer degree. Our apprentice program is bringing in technicians. So lower level, but still giving them the opportunity based on their training that they're receiving at their school. And it's, we partner with some of the local community colleges. So the training that they're receiving at school, plus their hands-on training that they're receiving while they're an apprentice at Micron, they're coming into a full-time role as a technician.
Okay. Interesting. And kind of piggybacking on what you were saying about early careers, that's another kind of a new aspect to our survey that we did this year. We asked the participants if they offer like a special mobility benefit for an early career. And we're seeing growing numbers because I think it's tied to, again, the discussion that we had of getting that talent early, right? You want to get them as soon as you can. If it's not an internship, maybe it's an early career type of thing. So do you have within your global mobility policy, Slaven, do you have a specific one for somebody who's, like a new college grad or early in their career?
No, so we would just offer a lump sum, just like we would for the interns. Same thing for the co-ops and same thing for our LDPs as well. So those are the leadership development program participants. Everybody gets a lump sum. The lump sum is kind of determined basically based on, family size, also the site that you're going to. So if you're going to, say, Carlsbad or San Jose Bay Area, to Seattle or New York, those are high cost living areas. So the lump sum will be adjusted based on that.
So they're given the lump sum and they're given the technology again as well.
Yeah, we're very proud of that technology that we've built with Weichert. It has destination content on there. So while we don't arrange the housing for them or the transportation, the flights, they have all of those resources at their fingertips. This is an app-based tool that the interns or LDPs or anybody can really get at at their fingertips on any point or anytime they want, whether they're between classes or on the go shopping or just at home watching TV, they can have it at their fingertips. They'll need to arrange all of that. But at least what we wanted to do is if we're only going to provide lump sum, then the goal was to give them as many resources for them to be able to do so. So we have a lot of the short-term housing on there. We have transportation on there, wellness, we have household goods shippers on there. And we've accounted for the fact that we know that interns aren't going to have a lot of stuff, right? If you're in college, you probably have like a microwave and a hot plate, and that's probably all you're going to move. So rather than like a huge moving truck, we've put options on there for things like Trunk. Trunk is a company that basically it's like a pod. So small shipments, if they want to utilize those, short-term housing, those kind of things. And it's important that they also connect with the other interns going to those sites. So this year we actually turned on, there's a community feature, basically like a chat feature. And this year we've actually turned that on. Last year we didn't. But this year we talked to the internship team, the early talent team, and they said, yeah, let's go ahead and turn that on. So it basically gives them a chat room that they can chat with other interns going to their same location. And they can talk about roommates or maybe commuting to work together, or if they want to go on a run or grab a bite to eat. But it basically creates that inclusive environment, right? Even before they've started their job. So we give them access to this as early on as we can, so they can kind of start that environment and connecting with them very early on.
Kind of start making some friends before they even get there. Right? That's great. Alice, how about for your early careers? What are you providing to them?
So we do have new college grad policies that vary from location to location. For the U.S., it's a lump sum based on mileage between your departure and your destination location, plus rental finding assistance. And the mileage is based on the distance, but also based on whether you're undergrad or grad. So whether you're finishing undergrad or grad school, some of the other countries provide temporary housing, miscellaneous incidental allowance, rental finding assistance as well. So it varies, but for the most part, there is some cash component, if you will, whether it's a lump sum or a miscellaneous incidental allowance, and some home finding assistance, I think are probably the staple support items, if you will, for each of the different locations.
Sure. And you got to keep in mind that people in the early part of the career are new college grads, like Slava mentioned, they're pretty low maintenance. They just have a couple things and they're pretty self-sufficient and they can get themselves to point A pretty easily, given they have some technology tools that'll help them connect with other people as well and also give them some destination services as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Technology plays a key part, right? I mean, a lot of these people, a lot of these, college grads now are so tech savvy that they want the latest and greatest and whatever they have. So we're trying to kind of stay on that forefront. And with the help of Weichert, I think we're more than achieving that. What's great about Simplicity is that it's highly customizable. And that's really what attracted us to Simplicity, is that we can put our own videos on there. We can put our banners, our logos, our own colors. We can take out things that are relevant to this population and we can add in things that we want, that we feel is relevant to this population. So the highly customizable portion of it was really important to us. And then another key part was actually bringing in the early talent leaders into these meetings, into these conversations, really on ahead of time, listening to them, what their wants and needs are, and then building the product in that fashion. And actually, I kind of took a back seat in terms of like I was facilitating those meetings, but I was really letting them drive it so that they can be proud of this product. The idea was for them to build it the way they want for their population because they know them the best. So whatever they envision for their population, for their interns, for their grads, they know them best. So I wanted the product to be built to their specifications. I was there to kind of give my 2 cents and my feedback and my recommendations and all those kind of things. But it was amazing how it all came together. And it was, at the end of the day, it was a product that we're all proud of.
It sounds like it. Good for you. That's great. Well, we're getting close to the end of our time, so I wanted to pose one last question to both of you. Alice, if you had one piece of advice to another global mobility professional who is starting to develop an intern program, what would it be?
I would say to really think about what's important to your intern population. And that could be based on your business line, based on your location. So if you think about, I worked in the New York City space for several years, and their needs are different than Boise, Idaho, So
A little bit. A little bit, yeah.
the fact that you're in a big city versus, a small rural town, that's going to really influence what your interns need. So maybe in New York City, they don't need transportation because they can hop on the subway. Whereas in Boise, Idaho, they're going to need some type of transportation assistance, whether it's an allowance, a rental car, whatever it is. So I think you have to really consider what's important to your intern population. Again, either based on the industry that you're in or based on the location, based on the length of time that they're going to spend with you. And if you can get feedback, Slava made a good point about just soliciting feedback from the people that are ultimately impacted. So surveys and things like this that Weichert are doing, get that information and use it to help build your program. But I think you really have to assess what's important to the interns.
Good advice.
I would say listen to the wants and needs of the program, right? Listen to the wants and needs of the people that are on the front lines. A program that's in its infancy is going to have much different requirements and wants and needs than a program that's a little bit more advanced already.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So it's not it's not a one-stop shop kind of, right? You can't just do it holistically across the board. No two programs are exactly the same, but I would say take a step back, and bring other teams into the fold, like the early talent team, see what their wants and needs are, see how they want to build the program, what they want to offer. But like I said, a program that's in a different stage than somebody else is going to have their own wants and needs. So it's important to kind of listen to them and take them into account when you're kind of building out those benefits and when you're trying to move the program forward.
And consider cultural differences as well. Just because, from country to country, there may be some differences that you need to consider as well. So it's nice to come from a global perspective, which we do at Micron, and we have global policies, but you definitely have to consider what's the local norms or, what cultural differences may exist between a different location. So take that into consideration as well.
Very good point. Well, I want to thank you both for sharing your expertise and experience. And if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and we'll get back to you via email. So thank you again.
Thank you.